Order for Monday, September 9th, 2019. And our first order of business this morning is our delegations. We have item 2.1. We have Aaron Oliver from Kids Sport in Dawson Creek Chapter in attendance for our Kids Sport proclamation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Aaron.
Councillor Wilbur's going to come to you.
Oh, awesome.
The president of the Kids Sport Chapter.
What don't you do?
I don't know what I don't do. She does everything.
Thanks for coming
Thank you.
this morning. Whereas Kids Sport helps remove financial barriers that prevent some children from experiences of being part of organized sport. And whereas sport participation provides benefits beyond physical health to enhance social and emotional well-being. And whereas Kids Sport encourages and promotes partnerships and support at a local level between the local chapter and businesses, professional sports groups and organizations, and the community at large, by raising awareness and funds to support local children. And whereas Kids Sport is a long-standing and integral part of the life of the Dawson Creek community of helping children, now therefore I do hereby proclaim the week of September 7th to 13th, 2019 as Kids Sport Week in Dawson Creek. Good job. Good job. Good job.
Good job. Thank you. So since 2010, the city of Dawson Creek, we have raised, have given out $44,000 towards children's sports. So 213 children have been able to go into sport with this program. And we would like to thank a company this week for the TD Bank with Jolene Seymour, if she'd like to come up, because she's going to present Kids Sport with a check for $1,000.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So, yes.
Thank you very much. We have a program called Team Play, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to allow all the children to be able to do things right at home recorded as well. So $1,000.
Thanks, Lori. Good to see you. Thank you.
You gotta look at the camera.
I just would like to mention that I know soccer has done it, and I know there's other groups out there that receive funding from Kids Sport. So we would just like to ask all of those groups in the community that you add a little box on your registration form saying, yes, I would like to donate $5 to Kids Sport, and that will help us keep that money coming in. It'll keep kids occupied and making healthy decisions. So it's an option, and so we're putting it out there and asking that you talk to your groups and do that.
Thank you, Shaylee. Thank you.
Very much.
Aaron?
Thanks, Aaron.
Our next delegation this morning, 2.2, is Becky Darnborough and Curtis Lindball from Work BC in attendance regarding a presentation on employing people with disabilities and Disability Employment Month proclamation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Becky,
Thank you.
Curtis.
Morning.
So you guys have a presentation. You want to do that first, and then we'll do the proclamation?
That would be wonderful.
Have it, Chair, and the floor is yours.
So as some of you might be aware, September is Disability Employment Month throughout most of Canada. So we've asked for a proclamation for this month. And I made a little bit of a slideshow here just on why employing people with disabilities makes good business sense. What is a disability as defined by the World Health Organization? Disabilities is an umbrella term covering impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions that can limit people in certain ways. What is the difference between a visible and non-visible disability? This is a big one because for a lot of us, we see people with wheelchairs, we see people with canes, seeing eye dogs, and we are automatically aware that that person may have a physical limitation. However, there are some disabilities that are not visible, such as psychiatric disorders, mental illnesses, learning disabilities, so on and so forth. Untapped employment market. 45% of people with disabilities right now are unemployed. That is a huge market of people that are waiting to work. 1 in 7 Canadians aged 15 and older reported having a disability in 2012, and this represents 3.8 million individuals, or 14% of our population right now. It's expected by 2025 that the number of persons with disabilities in Canada will rise to 25%, which makes that market even larger. 500,000 of people with disabilities right now are waiting and willing to work at this moment. This is just a table, a chart of people with mild disabilities and people with more severe disabilities, and as you can see on the chart here, the numbers greatly differentiate between milder and severe disabilities across men and women from 25 to 64 years old. Persons with disabilities make up only a small percentage of our workplaces. There are many misconceptions surrounding hiring people with disabilities in the workplace. People with disabilities cost more to employ, that's one misconception. Employing people with disabilities will increase safety incidents. Employees with disabilities will have higher rates of absenteeism. Employees with disabilities require some training and support. And employers cannot discipline or fire employees with disabilities. But the truth is, employees with disabilities have 40% lower incident rates and 78% lower overall costs associated with accidents. 90% of people with disabilities did as well or better at their jobs than their non-disabled coworkers. 86% rated average or better in attendance than their non-disabled coworkers, and staff retention was 72% higher among people with disabilities. The benefits to hiring people with disabilities is obviously higher employment retention, creating a diverse, inclusive workforce, which is something that we're all striving to do more of. There's a large amount of purchasing power in people with disabilities. If you include their friends, their families, we're looking at over $300 million to $1 billion of purchasing power just in that group. When you add in other factors, that number greatly goes up. It also contributes to a healthy community representative of all of its members. And then I just have a reference page here. So it's very important, I think, that as a community that we see and we strive to have the most inclusive workforces as we can. So that's something that Work BC strives to commit to, seeing more and more people with disabilities in our workforces to make our community more inclusive and representative of our community.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank
you. Council, any questions? Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you both for coming in today. So if I were looking to refer my employer to some resources or some people in the community so they could learn more, who would I talk to, or where would I go?
You would talk to either myself or Curtis, or any of our staff at Work BC would be a fantastic resource. We do lots of different things in the community, such as wage subsidies, things like that, to really look at ways that we can help employers find a good fit for an employee with disabilities.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll have you come up and we'll read our proclamation. And whereas hiring people with disabilities provides a mutual benefit for employers, employees, and communities, and whereas building connections and helping people with disabilities find work is our goal, while raising awareness within the community, including the general public, community partners, businesses, and non-for-profit and organizations is our goal. And whereas we recognize that people with disabilities make great employees, and it is proven that businesses experience fewer turnovers when they invest in a person with disabilities, as they typically have higher rates of retention and are 5 times more likely to stay on the job than people who do not have a disability. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim September 2019 as a month for raising awareness and creating jobs for all our citizens, known as Disability Month in Dawson Creek.
All right.
And certainly when we saw you guys were on the agenda, I just wanted to make sure that the City of Dawson Creek has absolutely recognized this, our policies at the city in terms of recognizing this as an important factor, and certainly it's a piece of our policy as it relates to hiring.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming in today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good job. Great job. Yeah, no, you can get a picture.
Get a
and,
picture. Over there.
you can stay here all day if you like. Other than, thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
2.3, we have Chelsea and Carla, Chelsea, and Kit are in attendance regarding our British Columbia Rivers Day proclamation and permission for drain marking program. Good morning. Let's do the proclamation first, and then you guys can have a chance to explain your drain marking program. Morning.
Morning.
Ladies, morning. 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 Come on up. Come on in. Whereas the rivers of British Columbia played an important role in the discovery and heritage of our province, and whereas rivers are an integral part of our natural environment upon which every living thing is dependent, and whereas the province, recognizing the importance and significance of rivers for environmental, economic, and recreational value for the citizens of British Columbia, deserves to preserve this resource in its natural state. And whereas the Outdoor Recreation Council of British Columbia, in cooperation with the provincial government and the citizens of the province, strive to encourage a greater awareness of the value of this resource among all residents. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim September 22nd, 2019 as British Columbia Rivers Day in Dawson Creek. Thank you, Kit.
Thank you.
So you guys also have a drain marking program, and do you want to do that at the delegation table, or do you want to do it here?
We'll just do it here.
Okay.
Do I start with that, or?
Yeah, sure. Kit can explain, kind of. Or do you want me to explain, Kit?
Okay. So part of the relationship between the City of Dawson Creek and the Watershed Society and our other sponsors, like the Dawson Creek Art Gallery, we have an ongoing education program targeting towards the community and especially the kids in the community. Part of that this year, so our ask this year is for permission to do a storm drain marking program. The first part of that will be at the Park and Play event later this month on Rivers Day. And it's just simply a stencil. The kids go along and you mark your drain. And it matches up with our previous signage that goes along the creek. At each point where the storm drains enter the creek, we have a sign that shows where that water came from. So that you can have a more direct knowledge of where you live and how it's connected to the creek and the water and all the contaminants that potentially could end up there. So that's our ask for.
Cool. Great.
It's a great idea.
All right. Well, thank you. Great idea. Thank you.
That's one.
And I just, also, go ahead.
I was just going to say yes. So we extend the invite to our BC Rivers Day Park and Play event held on September 27th at Crescent View Park from 11 to 2.
Perfect. The 27th?
22nd.
22nd? And we're at, unfortunately, I think UBCM Council will be, but we'll be there in spirit. And so thank you guys for coming in. Obviously, it's really good for us to continue to keep the awareness of how important the rivers and the water are to our community and region, and appreciate all the work that you guys have done. I mentioned to Chelsea for councils that I personally want to really get out and get to Bear Hole Lake, and so I think I'll send a message out to council, and be maybe worthwhile for us this fall to try and arrange a tour of the watershed so that we can really see all of the work that's going on behalf of our community and our region for that watershed. So we'll send a note out, but I really appreciate the ability for us to be able to do that. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming in today. Appreciate it. Now we'll bring the request back under Mayor's business. Our next delegation this morning is Marilyn Belak, a resident of Dawson Creek, Pat's counselor. Welcome, Marilyn.
Hi.
And she's here to do a bit of information to council. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship, council members, staff. It's deja vu, as I was saying, to be back here. And it's so wonderful to be in two delegations that are dear to my heart. This city needs to be congratulated on their move to embrace watershed stewardship. And it's neat to be here talking about water again. It has taken us a very long way in Dawson Creek, and we are quite known for how we manage both our local supply, domestic supply, and the research we've done on the watershed. So I was contacted earlier this year by by the Vancouver Island Association of Local Governments, who had noticed during the drought that their groundwater resources were being deplenished. And it's happening at the same time that there's a new water licensing bylaw about extracting groundwater for bottling and bulk transport. So of course, we need to think about that in our area, because our economy and our water resource need to be finely balanced. So I want to talk to you about the motion being brought forward, and because it affects us. In this research, since we've adopted the watershed stewardship program and applied science to it in our Kiskatnaw Bear Hole Lake area, we have found that indeed our supply does have groundwater refreshment both up in Bear Hole Lake and down the watershed, the river in various places. We're still mapping where that is and how much it is, but we are not strictly a runoff water source as we had suspected many years ago. So it's important. I know we had a lot of borrowing pits up around the Bear Hole Lake area and Upper Kiskatnaw that we didn't have an agreement to be decommissioned when they were left, and so we talked to the ONG about that. And we've just done such a good job. So I know how it is. You sit there at UBCM and it's a very long number of hours where you listen to resolutions come through. And so my main purpose here was just to to underline this motion that is being brought. And first of all, I have a little excerpt from our own 2018 watershed report. And I'll read it out just for the public. Groundwater levels. It was a report by our watershed steward on the Bear Hole Lake and Kiskatnaw sources. Groundwater recharge is a vital component of the Kiskatnaw River hydrometric system, as it can supply up to 73% of the base flow in that lake and river. Results from past Bear Hole Lake water balance have also indicated high levels of groundwater recharge. During winter months in the headwater area, understanding the relationship between groundwater and surface water flows during drought or low flow times is critical for accurate management decisions. Knowledge of groundwater recharge areas is also important, as they may be impacted through land use disturbances. If mapping of groundwater was completed, there may be potential to analyze local and groundwater hydrogeology to facilitate decisions focused on alternate water supply and treatment. This is a perennial question because, because fortunately we are aware of the area we live in and how rare water is as a resource. Of course, coming here to talk amongst a bunch of droughts on a rainy day is not reinforcing this, but the long-term forecasts are that there will be more droughts, and we have to be conscious of this. So the motion being brought forward to the floor of the UNBC, the last line is the most important. It's a very brief resolution, and it talks to stopping permission or licensing of further groundwater resources. It does not talk to any other use of groundwater. It's very specific. So, the resolution, whereas water is an essential resource upon which all life, including all ecosystems and all local communities, depend, and whereas water is a public heritage and a public trust for present and future generations, and access to water must not be compromised by commercial operations relating to commercial water bottling or commercial bulk water exports. Therefore, be it resolved that the Premier of British Columbia and the Minister of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development be requested to immediately cease the licensing and extraction of groundwater for commercial water bottling and or bulk water exports for aquifers. So it's to put a moratorium on it at this point and research what our actual resource is before we play with it anymore. So anyhow, this council, this city hall was part of nurturing the Watershed Stewardship Program and the Dawson Creek Watershed Society, and it has taken us a long way. So I would just like you, I know you kind of vote in the block, except for the odd occasion when there's a rebel in the crowd, but please keep this in mind and please attend that resolution, because it did pass unanimously on Vancouver Island and it's being supported by a lot of the lower mainland. So I look forward to hearing back about how that went at the UBCM and what the feel for the province is about the water issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Marilyn. We appreciate it. It's nice to see you. Nice to have you here back in the council chamber.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you. 2.5, we have Jenna Coleman, Executive Director from the Nowakan Friendship Center in attendance, speaking to a request that's on our agenda later this morning. Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning.
Welcome.
It's my first time here, so
Good to have you here.
I'm not sure. Thank you very much for having me. I believe everyone has a copy of the letter. I was just going to read it for you to explain what we're asking for. Dear Mayor and Council, the Nowakan Friendship Center has been a non-for-profit organization in the city of Dawson Creek for nearly 50 years. We've put on many great free community events over the years, and the programs that we offer are increasing by leaps and bounds. The programs and events that we offer to the community are not just for Indigenous people or members, but for everyone. The name Nowakan means Native White Canadian, and part of our mission is to promote friendship and understanding between Indigenous and non-Indigenous citizens of the South Peace River District, to encourage greater participation of people of Indigenous origin in community affairs and activities with the goal of strengthening and understanding, and to encourage and promote community development. The Nowakan Friendship Center would like to increase publicity to our free events so that more members of our community may benefit from them. Currently, we utilize Facebook and we have almost 400 followers. We advertise in the Dawson Creek Mirror for our events and place posters in strategic locations around town. However, we're still finding it difficult to reach members of the community who may not access these outlets. As the Friendship Center does not have a large enough sidewalk to permit a sign, and the placement of one would only reach those attending the center, we would like to place a sign on a commercial property on 17th Street that is not currently being used. We have been in contact with the owner of this property, and he has said that there is no problem with us putting a portable advertising sign there. The Nowakan Friendship Center will be responsible for the rental cost of this sign. We're asking Mayor and Council for a variance to the bylaw, sign regulation bylaw number 4369, 2018, so that we may advertise our free ongoing community events on this property. I've also attached a schedule of, I think, September and October as an example of what kind of events we're hosting at the center in Friendship. Yes, sir.
Great. Good job. Well, thank you. We appreciate you coming in. Council, any questions? We are going to deal with it later on, but Councillor Lecter?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Jana, for the presentation. The property you're talking about on 17th Street, whereabouts?
It's Ascension Builders, Jonathan Simmons.
Okay.
On 17th. I can't remember the exact address off the top of my head. I think it's something like 103, 18 or something.
Okay. And the reason I ask, is there, when you look around to make sure that people are aware of what's happening, is there any other locations you've looked at or would be thinking about trying to do the same with a sign? Like, is one location going to be enough, or is there thoughts that maybe you would look at some other areas as well?
Well, I suppose if we had the variance, then we would definitely look at, you know, more advertising, as much advertising as we can.
To get the message.
Yeah, we have access to a lot of amazing programs and things that we can put on, so.
Okay.
The location is the Old Joy Propane property?
Just north of that.
Okay.
On the same side.
Thank you.
Councillor Earl?
So this is kind of switching hats, but not really. So with my other work, we have a digital billboard on our property, and there are a number of businesses throughout town over recent years who've invested in digital billboards as well. And from time to time, we're usually pretty happy to support a non-profit event by helping advertise their stuff if they have a graphic ready to go, and they're pretty quick to switch out. So it might not hurt to approach us at the credit union and other businesses throughout town that have made that investment, because the vast majority aren't selling ad space. They're looking to promote their business and the community as well. So just some
Thank you.
food for thought.
Just to specify, the variance would actually be to the 30-day limit. So what we would be asking for is to have a 3-year, I'm not sure what
No.
the correct terminology is, but to be renewed every year. And then
Third-party advertising on a non-owned property on a temporary sign requires that variance for the bylaw that we currently have. So, okay. Jana, thank you for coming in.
Yes.
We'll deal with it. It is on the agenda later this morning.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you. 2.6 is our delegation that we'll be having at 1 o'clock. So our next, now onto new councillor business, item 3.1, Councillor Parslow.
Yes, thank you. As you know, I'm the liaison person between the city and the Mile Zero Park Society. At the last meeting of the Mile Zero Park Society, there was quite a long discussion about the future of the Sudeten Hall. Attached to this, staff has placed a couple of reports from Force Engineering, and you will have read that according to their estimates, because of the water flow that's undermining the structure and the condition of basement and movement of lumber, you're talking about a project that's in about $1.5 million area of funding, which is of course beyond the city's capacity in our present financial plight. So the question and discussion basically went something like this. The Sudeten Hall was an integral part of the Mile Zero Park. It was used a lot for dances and community events. It is deteriorating further as it just rests there. So the society would like to be informed at some future date, but not too far off. What is the plans of the city? Are we going to try to restore it, replace it? They know and are very understanding of that, the finances of the city, so they're not really expecting the city to do that. But they would really like to know, is there a way forward? If not, then we should deal with removal of the facility because it's deteriorating. Is there any advantage to the transfer of ownership from the city to the society from the point of view of grant applications? They believe there's at least 3 sources of grant funding that might touch $1 million. Is there a way forward? So I'm just raising this for staff to maybe share with us some future date. If there is a way forward, what are the advantages of transferring ownership? The society does not wish to inherit a white elephant, so to speak, if that's the appropriate expression, and then be stuck with demolition costs. So they want some resolve to this, if possible. So that's a report. Maybe it can be brought back at some future meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Lexner?
Just one, and thank you, Charlie, for bringing that forward. So when this was moved, it was the early 90s, wasn't it, I think? My concern would be we got a foundation that's less than 20 years old that has failed. Like, was it an engineered foundation? Do we know the history on it, or how did we end up in a situation where less than a 20-year-old foundation has failed on us?
Duncan?
Through your worship, it was completed in the 90s. I don't have the history in front of me. My understanding was, I don't know, Kevin, did the city coordinate that work? Do you remember? I know there were some issues. I know that part of the foundation collapsed during construction, and a new foundation was poured inside of that, and that's why the building doesn't sit necessarily on the outer edge. However, I would assume, I wasn't here in the early 90s, that everything met the requirement of the day. With these reports, and I'll kind of bounce into the reports a little bit, the first report really identified the concern and the movement within the building, and recommended to mitigate some of that risk and that movement, that the building be closed. And the second report came back with some options and some costing. Council directed, and I don't have that resolution in front of me, but council directed that it be brought back through the budget process, which it was included in the assumptions and included in the budget, and I would have to say that was 2018 looking at it, but I'd have to go back again. And at this time, it's not included in the 5-year plan, and there's no direction from council to provide any additional information on this at Ayton Hall, so it is out there right now.
So perhaps based on Councillor Parslow's information, that we bring it back into our budget process for this fall under a capital budget and provide some direction through there and explore some of those options that the society are looking for and the city are going to consider, and we can get some updated information from administration and society in terms of what the options and what the future are, and we have that discussion within our capital budget process for 2020 and the 5-year and/or 10. As a suggestion, Councillor Wilbur?
No, I agree, but I would just also like to add to that I would like to have the information on what partnership grants are available. So partnership between the city and the society to see what grants are available. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're putting out funding, but there's opportunities there for large capital funding for grants. So I would be interested in hearing that information come back as a part of that report. What opportunities are out there before we just say the one option is to hand it over to the society? Can we get further as partners? So I would like to have some information on that as well.
And I guess that, to me, that's exactly what we would
Exactly.
do within that capital budget process in terms of trying to provide some direction in terms of what is council's view and direction to administration that we want to explore for options for the hall for the future. Councillor Rowe?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also ask if there's any data the Mauser Park Society has on the usage of the facility, simply because in the interim period since it's been closed, we've also brought the Mercer Hall on board, so I'm not sure what the demand would be in addition to the Calvin Crook Center Theater. I mean, certainly I understand the proximity to the rest of their assets make it a very valuable amenity, but I'd be interested to see what the usage was prior to it going down and see if, how that factors into our decision.
So through your worship, just process over to Brenda.
Yeah, through your worship, there should be a motion directing staff.
Sure.
Okay.
Whichever options need to be considered.
Okay.
And Brenda,
So-
through new councillor business or mayor's business?
We can do it now because it is on the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll do, Councillor Parslow, do you want to move a motion directing staff to bring it back through our budget process one option?
So move.
So seconder, Councillor Wilbur, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Parslow? Other councillor business? Councillor Wilbur, then Councillor Kemp.
Something that was brought forward to my attention is our rainbow crosswalk at the senior high school. And I know we had discussed it in the past about maybe putting some white between the colored strips or putting the colored strips on white. It's hard to see because it's just solid colors on the asphalt. And I know we had discussed it, but I'm not sure if we ever passed a motion to directing staff to actually do that. I know it was just discussion and something we would look into, but it is fall and I realize we're going into winter, but fall means there's more kids using the crosswalk, and so it's not very identifiable with just the colors on the asphalt. And so I was talking to some of our students in our community, and they were wondering, could we get that white put between the colors? And so I guess I would like to, can I make that motion?
No.
Do I do it under mayor's business?
We bring it back under mayor's business?
I'm all
If there is.
confused. We're making motions, not making motions.
So if it's on the agenda, then it can be dealt with there.
Okay.
If it's coming off the floor, then it comes back to
So can we discuss it
mayor's
under mayor's business
Yep,
then?
sure.
And I would like to, I'll make my motion then. I just think that I appreciate that it's there. I was part of it
the planning and putting it there. And, but I also want it to be effective for our students, and it is a crosswalk, so it should be safe.
Let's ask administration. Duncan, can you give us an update on the crosswalk?
Through your worship, I kick it to Kevin. I don't know that that I can provide an update right now. Just
Okay.
new
All right.
information. So,
Well-
Kevin, do you have anything on the plan, or we can find out if it's coming back under mayor's business? I can have an answer for you then.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was just discussed. It was never moved.
Thank you.
Brenda,
Counselor-
sorry, your worship, Brenda, do you need a motion to move it to mayor's business?
Yes, there should be a motion.
Oh, I get a motion. I would move that we discuss this under mayor's business.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Kemp?
Procedures.
I just wanted to congratulate the Rotary Club. They did a bubble run last month, their first annual in Kin Park, and it was such a great success. My kids and I attended, and it was quite fun. So I'm looking forward to them to hosting that again next year. And then I wanted to give an update. So it's been some time on the dog park, kind of where they're at and what they're doing. So right now they have secured the insurance for the park. They've been doing events, and they have secured their board. That's been since August 28th. They have secured the money for the gate, the baffle gate that they're going to put in, so they're installing that this week. So that'll be ready. The signs and rules and responsibilities they're posting this week or next week at the park. They've been doing barbecues, pets, photo shoots, 50-50 draws, just a lot of fundraising for the money to secure for the park. They're doing a silent auction tomorrow. They've been doing bake sales. For October, they're doing a Halloween fundraiser. So they're pretty busy kind of getting their money secured. They wanted to thank the community for all their support and money that they've raised. So they're hoping the park will be open within the next 2 weeks. And they did also want to mention, like, they've been very diligent going there and cleaning up the poop that's been there and doing their share of work there. So.
Good. Great job. It's been really pleasing to see the momentum that the organizers have put into it, and seeing the, as you say, the fundraising initiatives and stuff. You're doing a great job.
They're very eager. So.
Good stuff. Councillor Earl.
I'll be really quick, Your Worship. Just if I was wondering if I could get a brief update from staff on the repaving project on 112th Avenue, as I've had some constituents give me some curt feedback after that. So just wondering where we stand and for their sake.
You're not alone.
Duncan?
So through your worship, Kevin and I met with the contractor on Friday for 112. Typically the contractor deals with our engineering department. However, as we were getting late in the season, we had some serious concerns around the contractor's ability to deliver this project on time, and needed to meet with him individually on Friday to relay our concerns, have him update his construction schedule, and discuss his plans on how he will get to substantial completion by October 5th. He's provided us a schedule that can meet that timeline. Kevin and I have set a date of September 20th to meet with the contractor again. By that time, he will have all of his base gravels in, and we'll have all of that work completed, and we'll be prepared to pave, and also should have some of the curb and gutter completed. And we made it very clear that this is an important project and has been under construction for a significant amount of time, and that it needs to be completed before freeze up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lexner?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for raising that, Jeremy. I mean, obviously, I think as elected councillors in the city, people talk to us, ask us questions. I think they've been probably more than understanding with the wet weather we've had, but at times I think when the weather is good and they don't see, you know, more than a handful of people, they're concerned about the time frame. And it's my understanding, if a project like this, when we go to tender, we have a completion date on it. Post-completion date, there is fines initiated should a contractor not meet that deadline. I believe that's the case in all of our contracts. So we may, as a council, want to entertain a discussion on this. And I'll give you an example. The milling we've done out here for the curbs and so on was done many months ago. And people are asking about that too, saying, you know, we drive through a lot of towns. When they start a project, traditionally they'll finish the project. This one seems we've started something, and not we've contracted it, and they've let it run for months. I think we're going to have to readjust how and what we want to look at as a city to say that's just not acceptable, at least in my mind, and I'm open for that discussion. If we're going to have projects, we always look to the lowest bid if possible. Doesn't necessarily mean they get it. But many people will bid a project and might be higher based on, I have to have it done by this time. So it's a discussion I think we want to have as we move forward this fall in our deliberations, not just on budget, but on process as well. So it is a concern. It's been raised, I'm sure, to all of us out there, and I think we're kind of caught right now. I think they are meeting what's out there legally, but once that deadline comes and goes, those fines could probably put a contractor in a very difficult financial position. So.
Duncan?
So, through your worship, some discussion Kevin and I have had regarding the tender in the past. Typically you tendered, they started, we had the September 30th completion date as kind of that drop dead. The asphalt plants are usually shutting down come Thanksgiving and you need to be done. We're finding more so this year where part of the work is being started and not completed until it stays a construction site for many months. And so we've had some discussion around how we can change that into tender. In the past, it was a September 30th completion date. We're now looking at a X amount of days, reasonable, within the start of the project. So it can't remain a construction site for 6 months. Part of the discussion we had Friday, and that we've had with some of the other conversations, the other contractors, is appropriate resources. And with this summer, it's been very important that contractors allocate the appropriate resources when the sun shines, because we haven't had a lot of those good days, and there's certain work that can be completed when the sun is out and other work that can be completed when it's not. And so we've had a lot of those conversations. We do need to change our tenders because we are seeing a bit of a shift. We saw it on 17th here previously up near Forestry Building where that sat over the winter. And we're just seeing it more and more where it starts and it doesn't finish. So we will be changing that.
So perhaps the issue is we want council, what I'm hearing is we want to review that tender policy, what that is and what direction we provide on tendering and the tender policies procurement. And it is a policy that we set, so.
Do I need to make a motion to bring it up in mayor's business?
Yeah, let's drive that back up. And
purchasing policy?
Purchasing or tender policy, wherever it's contained within,
tender?
so that we can have that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moved by Councillor Earl, seconded Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any other councillor business? Minutes of our regular meeting of council for August 12th for adoption. Moved, Councillor Wilbur, second Councillor Earl. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And 4.2 is the minutes of our special meeting of council of August 27th for adoption. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Lexstrom. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of the minutes? For anybody? Correspondence. First one, 6.1. We have a letter from the Passenger Transportation Board regarding a municipal taxi application to increase fleet size for Golden Cabs.
I'd like to move we receive it for discussion.
Councillor Parslow, we receive for discussion. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
My thoughts around this immediately jump to the discussions we're having concerning the transit system and providing an array of options in the community to get from work, home to work, or medical appointments and so on. And I'm wondering what the reflections are of staff as it relates to this application and the future availability of assistance in the community getting from home to work.
Duncan?
So through your worship, we are still working on transit and what that model would look like, and because council has indicated there will still be some funding available for that program right now, it's focusing on the highest priority and trying to ensure that we keep those routes that accommodate some of those uses that you're talking about. As far as the request that's in front of you, some of this is driven through recent decisions through the Passenger Safety Board and new ride hailing and the Ubers of the world and the Lyfts of the world, and trying to create competitive market and free market, and allowing those taxis to compete with Uber or some of those other organizations that have started. One of the concerns, if you've read any of the media recently, is that taxis have far more stringent requirements than Uber, and there's been some pushback from the taxis on the province in that area. My understanding is these requests are common throughout the province right now, and it's an opportunity to try and compete.
Councillor Parslow?
Well, that's exactly the my thinking. You know, ride hailing, is that the appropriate term for it? I understand there's a business in Grand Prairie where there is an option there. So would this work against the option, a future business that's more of a Uber type of thing? Is this trying to consolidate the status quo?
Yeah. So through your worship, I really don't know where those margins lie with the taxis, and really it's the argument that I've seen, and again, it hasn't been specific to Dawson Creek, has been around free market and trying to allow free market to dictate. There are some fee requirements. There are low fee and low fares. Again, this is just something that I've read about and where it's driven from. I don't know in particular Golden Cabs what their concerns are, but this is a request that they put in front of council right now.
Councillor Lexton?
Thanks, Your Worship. And my understanding of this application is we would look at it as a council, and if we had objections, pass those objections on to the Transportation Board. And if not, I believe it's just really an informational issue for us. I don't think we have to move it forward. I see they're moving from 13, as my understanding, to 18, so an addition of 5. I'm not a heavy user of the service, but you do hear on occasion people have a difficult time getting them, so is there a need for more? I think, as our administrator has spoken about, the market will dictate that. So I personally don't have an issue with the application as it stands. I follow what Councillor Parslow has raised, which is the issue as we move forward in the city to make sure people can meet their transportation needs is going to have to be adjusted. We've talked about that, but this is really an individual business who provides a service for a cost.
So, Duncan, anything further you need?
Yeah, just so through your worship, absolutely correct. This is the Passenger Transportation Board asking for comments from council. They've indicated 30 days, but we followed up with them, and they've said that we can still provide those comments just with timing. But they're looking for comments from council regarding this application and whether you support it or not.
So our direction is, at this point, is we have no issues with the increase in their fleet size from council. Councillor Wilbur?
I don't have any problem with them increasing their fleet size, but I'm wondering, do we have any weight to put on it that maybe part of that increase of vehicles that is another accessibility one? Because that is a huge issue in the community for people with mobility issues. Is there is literally one cab in town that has accessibility access that this company has, is my understanding. So within our comments, is that within our perspective to say, yes, we agree with the increase, but we would like to see one of those be another accessibility vehicle? And I think that also pertains kind of to what Councillor Parslow has said as well around transportation. Who's needing the service?
So, motion?
I would move then that in our comments we ask that one of those increase in vehicles be an accessibility vehicle.
Okay. Second, Councillor Parslow, discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, we have a letter from Dale Campbell, President of the South Peace Mile Zero Park Society, regarding a request for a letter of support for the NDIT Economic Diversification Fund, that they want to do another project down at the park. Councillor Parslow?
I'd like to move that the City of Dawson Creek support the application to Northern Development Initiative Trust from the South Peace Mile Zero Park Society for a grant of up to $250,000 for the replica service station project from the Economic Diversification Infrastructure Fund.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Lexton, discussion?
Just a few comments. This project's been in the long-term plan of the society for a number of years. As we know, we enjoy a very active vintage car group in town, and we have a number of vintage service station things that we have in stock there, and we're going to acquire. This will also provide a good hub for all those vintage car enthusiasts, meeting place, etc. And this would certainly not only improve the wonderful village we have. A lot of comments I receive from visitors, wow, this is one of the best ones we've seen, and we have a wonderful society there. But this, some exciting plans, and the co-op's been behind this as well, so it's a good partnership.
Thank you. Further comments? One comment I would have when I read this was, and I think we, council, should have this discussion at some point, maybe through budget this fall or this winter might be one, and it's not an absolute financial discussion, but this is city infrastructure. It's built upon lands owned by the city of Dawson Creek, so any of the improvements that take place down there, as we've seen with Sedaten Hall, are part of ours. So I think it's a real good conversation for us to engage in terms of the future of that park, is the liability of council, and how do we manage to the financial impacts of that in the future, and the implications of that for the future. And there isn't anything today, because you've got the society that operates it and looks after it, manages it, and looks after capital improvements and maintenance and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's the City of Dawson Creek accountability facility, and we should have that conversation as it relates to that ongoing fiscal liability that exists for the residents and the businesses of Dawson Creek. Councilor Parsons?
Just to add to that, if I may, is that many of the facilities there are owned on paper by the Historical Society. Many are owned by the South Peace, and some are owned by the City of Dawson Creek. Should either society dissolve, they all go back to the city. Yeah. So ultimately, the liability is there. But the philosophy, the practice of the society is they look after the maintenance of the facilities they own. The city looks after the maintenance of the facilities it owns. The Historical Society does its best as well. And ultimately, yeah, the liability, if either society was to fold, everything flows back to the ownership of the city.
Like I said, God bless the volunteers and the people that have built that amazing infrastructure down there and improve it every year. I just think that's a discussion council should have about that future liability, and understanding how that rests with the residents, and is it being accrued in our tangible capital asset program, and all of those things that are our liability as a city and that we're required to do by legislation. And so it's a piece of that to me. So it's just a conversation that council should have. Flavia, is that like tangible capital asset? Would it get included in there?
Yeah, I need to understand actually this whole process when they are capital incurred by the leasee, and then how we are recognizing that. But it should, because if the property is ours, we should be recognizing the capital cost incurred by the third party.
Yeah, and that's just my only point, that council should have that to understand that.
Yes, I will bring this as part of the discussion for the budget 2020 capital expenditure.
Thank you. Further discussion? We got the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have a letter from Terry McConaughey, Executive Director of the Canadian Home Builders Association, invitation to celebrate construction in Northern BC. Councillor Parsons?
See for information.
Thank you. Second? Do you have a second there? Councillor Wilbur?
So we can't.
No.
We could send them a letter of congratulations, maybe.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, if you wanted to do a subsequent motion to that?
Okay, I would recommend we just send them a letter from the city of Dawson Creek congratulating them and offering our thanks for the work they did.
Sure. Second? Councillor Kemp? Discussion?
Great idea.
All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have a letter from Bruce Gibbons, Merville Water Guardians, regarding a request to change zoning bylaws to prohibit the bottling of groundwater. Councillor Parslow?
Move to receive it for information.
Thank you. Second?
I'll
Councillor
second.
Leckstrom? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.5, we have a letter from Clint Fraser, CEO of Northern BC Tourism, regarding a request for sponsorship of the Northern BC Tourism Summit, October 3rd to 4th, 2019 in Prince George.
Move receive for information.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.6, we have an email from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, request for feedback on action on plastics, website and policy consultation policy paper. Councillor Leckstrom.
Through your worship, this is something I'm unaware that anybody has brought anything forward through council, so on this, I've read the paper. It's interesting. I believe there's been some court challenges even on the plastic bag issue. I know many people are trying to do it. We have community or businesses in our community doing their part as well, but unless we are going to, I guess, put a formal response together, I would move we receive for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Parslow. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.1, we have report 19142 from the General Manager of Development Services regarding the development variance permit 1904C from Morrison Land Development, Crescent View Subdivision. Duncan, can you give us a little bit of an explanation on this?
So through your worship, this is something that's been in front of council, I think 2 times previously. When we went out for the DVP, we received comments opposed to the variance, and therefore, as part of our procedure, it needs to come back for council final approval. I don't know that there's any surprises or changes in here, Kevin. Is there anything? The only conversation and the opposing comments that we've received are regarding water and integrated storm management. And in the implementation section, we have indicated that as part of this variance, this property would need to have an integrated stormwater management plan as part of the process to date. But other than that, it's the same.
Okay. Councillor Leckstrom.
Just a question through to administration. So the concerns we received were not new to us. I think people had expressed the concern about water flow and different things they had seen happening to their properties. It's my understanding everything we have dealt with under the DVP has addressed that with the contractor on, as you said, the water management plan for that site. So it should meet the requirements of the concerns raised by the people that opposed the DVP originally, or development variance permit.
So through your worship, my understanding, and I'll refer this to Kevin, but the integrated storm management plan will address water concerns from property grading to that storm to that detention before it leaves the site. Correct?
Yeah, through your worship, the intent of the plan is to mitigate runoff and the impacts of development from a pre-development stage to a post-development stage, so that includes all those things that I've mentioned. So that's the intent.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And if I could follow through with just a question and looking for clarification, it's my understanding if a home is developed, it's the responsibility of that owner to manage their water as well off that lot. So you couldn't build your lot up, create a water hazard problem for your neighbor from a legal perspective, can you?
So through your worship, a couple pieces to that. Previously, we didn't have graded lots come title and so it was up to each builder to grade their lot and to shed that water how they saw fit, because it wasn't part of a plan. Now we have this integrated storm water management plan, which has some grading requirements. It has an overall plan for the subdivision, and the builder, whoever purchases that lot, will be required to meet that plan, Kevin. Further, legally, you have a responsibility, we as the city have a responsibility to control water leaving our property.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilbur?
So my question is, when I look at this and I see that comments that have come in regarding surface water and stuff, this has been going on for 5 or 6 years. So within the plan that this development permit would allow, have the residents been notified and shown how this will be prevented as they're waiting to develop the rest of the property? So the concerns that I've heard is, it's great that they've got a plan moving forward for the future, but what are they going to do with the problem right now? So I've heard this from other development areas within the community. So I guess my question to staff is, what's going to be done to deal with the problem right now that's going on, as well as there's been discussion about the snow and where it's going and how it's draining off as well in the spring. So that's kind of the question that's been posed to me, and this isn't the only piece of property that's looking to be developed that I've heard about. So I guess that's my question from constituents is, what about what's happening now?
Duncan?
So through your worship, we don't have the integrated storm water management plan yet for this property. This is really the variance is working through what the requirements will be as far as the different aspects of the bylaw. So we haven't seen that. That will be an engineered plan that will be submitted to the city for review that needs to ensure, again, right from the property, that the water and the grading is channeled into their storm and into the detention and doesn't leave the property, doesn't impact neighboring properties. That's for this particular property. Anything that's already been developed and is having water issues becomes a property to property issue. We can't impact that, unfortunately, and we've had some calls in some already developed neighborhoods where water is leaving one property and entering onto another, and unfortunately legally that is a property to property. Kevin, have I missed anything?
So,
May I have a follow-up?
well, yeah, sure. We should have had a motion to receive for
Sorry.
discussion. I'm kind of leaving some latitude. I wouldn't mind getting something on the
Okay.
floor, but go ahead if you want to have one more, and then we're going to make a motion.
No, go ahead and make the motion, and then I
Thank
will
you.
ask. Thank you.
I
Councillor
will move
Luxon?
the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Parslow, discussion. Councillor
Already.
Wilbur?
Knits in my bonnet. So thank you to staff for that, but really, I guess what I'm asking about is the land that's not developed. Obviously, there's a drainage issue from that property that's not developed, and it's been going on for 5 or 6 years. So regardless of people that are to whatever side of it, they're getting water off undeveloped property. Is the person who owns this property have a plan to deal with that current issue now before the rest of the neighbors are affected this spring? So I realize in the development process plan, they're going to come with something that's engineered to the city and say, this is what I'm going to do in my new development. But what is he doing with the property that has issues right now? That's what I'm asking.
Duncan?
Okay, so through your worship, as an undeveloped property, if it were to remain a field, non-titled or untitled, it would remain a property owner to property owner issue. Correct, Kevin? When it becomes titled, or when they have the desire to title it and sell lots, we now go through the subdivision process. Integrated storm water management is part of that process, and they need to control the water from that property from impacting homes, from impacting culverts, from impacting future development within there. So the integrated storm water management plan, tongue twister, will be required to show how they are going to manage their water and not impact neighboring properties. But that only happens when it's subdivided and as they move through this DVP if approved by council. Have I missed anything?
Just through your worship, one thing that we, if council so desires, we can certainly ensure that the remaining parcel that is undeveloped, that there is some consideration within that there's no drainage coming off of it to impact it. So throughout this planning process, we can certainly look at that and ensure that.
And then part of the issues the proponent brought to us as the subdivision development bylaw changed in 2011, and because some of that infrastructure was developed prior to that, and now it changed the requirements for the stormwater management changed in that bylaw. Now that's where the dilemma occurred for the proponent in terms of how he was now forced into developing with these new requirements that didn't exist before, where some of that infrastructure was already in place. And so that's where we got into some of the discussion around the stormwater management, storm sewers, et cetera. Go ahead.
I completely understand that, and I believe there's probably several people that got caught in that change, but a change was made for a reason. I think we've given lots of lenience, waived a lot of stuff for this development, and I'm not comfortable without seeing concrete the plan, whether it's a field or not, that this is going to be dealt with and the neighbors aren't going to have these problems. So I'm not going to support this. But also, I believe the field should be fair. So a fair playing field for everybody. These are today's rules, and this is how we have to work within those rules. And I can say firsthand, it's possible.
Councillor Lexstrom?
I guess I'll speak to this motion. As I understand it, the developer is developing 27 lots on the south end of this property. At the south end, I mean, which backs onto the existing Camarlo. It's my understanding the water issue was against the existing Camarlo subdivision, so the issue we're talking about here in the stormwater management plan will address the issue. I don't know anybody else that could be impacted from that field as it's flowing, I'll say, probably more to the west than it is, and unless they're catching down on 21st, is it? I'm unaware of that. I haven't heard of that concern. So I think what we're dealing with, and certainly hearing the concerns, this will deal with it, and unless it meets our procedural bylaw or under development, then this can't move ahead. So I'm pretty comfortable that we've got this under control. I think we want to ensure that we share what's going to happen with our water management plan with the impacted community or the people that express that concern. But I think we've dealt with this.
Duncan?
So through your worship, the integrated storm water management plan has not been varied and is the same as what's required in the bylaw, Kevin. So they're developing, or the plan is to develop, I think it's 89th, which is the south portion of that property, bordering up against Carmelo. Any water from the new development cannot impact those properties as part of this plan, and that's what we'll be looking for. 21st Street, I don't know if we've received any comments from neighbors on 21st Street. That would be the only other area where water may flow, but as part of this, and what we've heard from council, is we want that water managed to ensure it's not impacting any of the surrounding properties. So we will be working with the developer on that.
And the developer spoke to that in terms of the water flowing to the west towards the 21st Street development, in terms of how he saw that being accomplished through our last session. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Wilbur opposed. 7.2, we have a report 19143 from the city planner regarding development variance permit for Arthur Jang Chuang Fan at 1844 87th Avenue. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, before people start discussing this, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Mayor,
the report
always try to give a little
He's
flexibility.
not a sword like the way.
I know, but you're bending over backwards to some people.
Thank you, Councillor Parslow.
Report 19143 from the city planner, redevelopment variance permit number 19-10, be received. Further, the request to widen the driveway at 1844 87th Avenue, a maximum of 2 meters in the westerly direction and a maximum of 3 meters in the easterly direction, be approved subject to no opposition being received during the 10-day notification period.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Duncan, do you want to?
Sure. So through your worship, the original request was to extend this to the west towards the intersection. We raised a concern with the homeowner regarding snow removal, and we already have, if you see from the overview there, we already have some paved areas within that intersection that were completed prior to the bylaw. So we've worked with the homeowner to essentially a compromise with 2 meters to the west and 3 meters to the east. It requires we go back out to the DVP, and essentially council is pre-approving the DVP provided we do not receive any comments opposed to the project.
Thank you. Further discussion, council? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.3, we have report number 19144 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding an application to change the hours of service of liquor service Lone Star Night Life, Unit 105 at 1100 Alaska Avenue. Now, before council deal with this, I believe the owner is in the gallery. Now, our procedures are that if you're not identified as a delegation on our agenda, that you can't speak, but if council provides unanimous support for that we can allow you to speak. And I don't know if that was your wish coming today or you just wanted to observe, but I'm prepared to do that and ask council if they would give you the opportunity to speak to the application should you wish to.
Yes, that's great.
So council, we need a motion to allow the proponent. Moved by Councillor Kemp, second Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. So if you do want to speak to it, we'll be happy to hear you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Jack Hines, own Lone Star Nightlife here in Dawson Creek. Kind of like maybe Tuesday, we just kind of found out that there's already been a bylaw in place many years ago for kind of holding back the idea of extending the hours. Unfortunately, we didn't kind of play that way or write our stuff up that way because we weren't aware of it. Also, just so everyone knows, in Fort St. John, I just got a real big apology email for the same thing. So with that being said, now that it's kind of, I kind of feel like, it was kind of a waste of time, a waste of money. I didn't realize that bylaw was there. And knowing now, what I'm wondering is, we kind of threw together a quick proposal letter to see if there was any hope that we could move forward later, considering maybe just extending the hours till 3 or something like this. Anything to help with this kind of shift over many years of the nightlife. And with the shift of the nightlife, I mean, we're seeing shifts in everything. Taxi service, that would be like a wonderful thing. It's one of our biggest complaints, like people can't get a ride home. It's just, there's less taxis on at 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff like this. So when Uber comes, that'll be a great thing for us if it comes here, stuff like this. But as far as just the nightlife is kind of getting left behind in a lot of stuff with, it seems like cannabis is here now, stuff like this, and everyone's like, yay, let's do it. But nobody's really sitting back and seeing, I'm here to tell everyone, the nightlife is still there, but it's shifted. The people aren't coming out till 12:30 at night now. Way back when I first started this, we were all out at 10 o'clock at night. We were looking for people. We didn't have it at our fingertips. Where are you? I'm in my garage. I'll be right there. You know what I mean? What time are, parents are coming out well, I thought you kids were going out. And basically we are. It's not even 12:30 yet, So we're getting an hour and a half of business on Friday night and a Saturday night. And I mean, it's just unsustainable for, our rent and stuff like that. I mean, we have I've been doing this for 10 years now, and like we have pretty much unblemished, like we have no contraventions on our license or anything like this. We have free shuttle, we have everything in place to try to run a top-notch show and stuff like this, but we are finding it's time to come in here and talk to everybody about, you know, somehow extending the hours or hour or half hour or anything, because it's disappointing to people. They do get there and then they start having fun, and less than 45 minutes sometimes we flick on the lights and we're like, you gotta go. And it's a shift that lots of people don't know about. Like, they're not coming out till really late at night. Nobody wants to go home. You know, you'll hear stuff from the RCMP and stuff like, this is going to cost us tons of overtime and all this here stuff. Well, you know, I don't know how much of that actually comes from there, as opposed to just someone being at home drinking all night and causing disturbances. You know what I mean? So I'm just here to find out, first of all, what your guys' decision is. Second, we kind of got some real 10th hour late information sort of thing on the whole thing. So we kind of were allowed to throw in a 10th hour kind of like, well, you know, maybe we could go this way or anything. And then my last thing is just like, after you guys make your decision and stuff, what are the, you know, the hopes or process or any reasoning, or would you guys listen, or could we have another meeting, however that works, just on like the thoughts of moving forward with a little bit of extended hours to try to make enough money to keep the facility here for Dawson Creek.
Okay.
And I'm doing the same thing in Fort St. John, like tonight. I gotta go and do the same thing because we were unaware of even the bylaw in the first place. I would have thought that city council, or not city council, but city staff or whatever would have said like, oh no, you can't do that, you gotta go this way. But I didn't know until Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you for giving the council the update on your operation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Council? Councillor Parsel?
Okay, to get this thing rolling, I'd like to move the recommendation as presented, which reads, the report 19144 from the Deputy Corporate Officer, the application for change to hours of liquor service for Lone Star Nightlife at Unit 105, 1100 Avenue be received. Further, council consider the location, person capacity, hours of liquor service, and views of the public for Lone Star Nightlife's application to extend the hours of liquor service from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, and opposes the application.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Wilbur, discussion. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. So I'm of two minds about this. Obviously, I think somebody wants to support business and who thinks ultimately adults, when they choose to consume alcohol, are responsible for their own actions. I'd like to give them a go. Having said that, we have received some reservations from our local RCMP detachment and the neighboring business, expressing some very, very well-founded concerns about extended hours and what that could mean. So I'm kind of at an impasse. I don't know that a 6-month temporary, given that people's recreational patterns change in the winter, I don't know that a 6-month temporary allowance would give us sufficient data to make a more informed choice moving forward. Yeah, so I'm not speaking in support of or against it, but it's very challenging because we want to make sure when people invest in our community and operate a business, and I'm not naive enough to think that anything that happens at 2 o'clock in the morning isn't also happening at 4 in the morning. So I don't know how much of a frustrating factor another 2 hours would actually be, but I do take the RCMP at their word that this will complicate their efforts to keep our community safe.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Lexter?
It's just speaking to this, we do have a business that operates under the legal format that's outlined for liquor licensee. The city of Dawson Creek has chosen to not go with the 4 a.m. closing, although that's a legal option. And that's what we have here as a business owner asking us to say, look, we're having a challenge, there's been a shift. I mean, it's difficult when you get responses from the neighboring businesses, from the RCMP stating this is going to be a concern. The challenge for the business owner is it's not the business owner himself, it's his patrons who would leave that if that's the, who chooses to do something, and whether it's 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I'm not a nightlife guy myself at this point. Certainly can't say I haven't been in the past when I was younger, but I'm of the opinion that to give it a shot and give it a try may be worthwhile, and look at the data based on what the RCMP see or the businesses, because I can't disregard their concerns that are brought forward. There's some pretty serious accusations about patrons that, and again, we have to assume they're patrons because people don't know. You can't guarantee that. So my thought would be we have a legal requirement that they're meeting. We have a policy issue, though, that we have altered as a city. So if we make a determination on this file, it would be very hard to not make the same determination for anybody else that does that. So I think we would be probably in a better standing to review the policy if that was our wish, versus take individual applications one off, would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
And I do feel for the business owner, and obviously it's, some of these calls and stuff we're hearing about definitely are from the patrons and how they handle their alcohol, I'll say. But I do know that the policy that we have in place, these issues were discussed. And so I know that this wasn't the only business I'm not sure this business was even there at that time when we discussed it. But all of these issues, plus stuff that came in from neighbors, was why that policy, I believe, was reaffirmed when it was. So my concern is it almost has been tried, tested, and that's why we made the decision we did at the time. So I'm of the mind where I appreciate small business. I do. I'm the champion for small business. But I think we also have to weigh out what type of business, where it's located, and what we're hearing back from the RCMP as well as the neighbors. And I know we have received complaints from neighbors regarding this particular business. Not everybody likes louder music or country music or whatever they play. But at the end of the day, I do not believe that any good comes at 4 a.m. in the morning if you are still out drinking and can't get a ride home, because whatever the situation may be, and it's been proven to us in the past. So I think we have the policy, the bylaw for a reason, and I support the decision that was made on that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Lexter?
Just a quick question, and probably through to you, Your Worship. Although we're dealing with this as an individual application, would we not at some point, and I go to the policy that we have and we've adopted, and it was a previous council to this one that adopted that through, as Councillor Wilbur has said, a great deal of looking at the issues. Probably I'd be more comfortable saying, look, we're going to either discuss or not discuss the policy versus taking a one-off application. I'm kind of caught in a dilemma here. If we do this, then we're opening the door to say to everybody, yes, you can apply and we'll evaluate each one. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed, I think, to say yes to one and no to another. But this may be more of a policy discussion based on that versus an individual application. Maybe administration can... Am I going down the right path? If you say, I know we have the ability to say yes to one and no to another, but if we're going to be fair in application of our bylaws, I think you got to be consistent.
Duncan?
So through your worship, this is triggered through a request for comment through the Liquor Control and Licensing Regulation regarding this application. They'll make that decision also based on its merits through their process and through their experience with this owner and this location. If council wanted to change this and wanted to allow it to 4 a.m., yeah, our recommendation would be to change the bylaw and to paint with that broad brush and to ensure that we're not giving one business a competitive advantage over another.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Lexstrom?
I would at this time move an amendment to the recommendation that would state at the end to extend where we go and opposes the application and put the words in reaffirms council's policy. I think that takes it out of the one-off application and allows people to look at the same policy. As the individual said, he was unaware of the policy as it's stated in the city. Then if the issue comes forward and there's an address to deal with this, we would deal with the entire policy, not one individual impacted by a policy.
Do you have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Parslow, discussion?
Councillor Lettson's already spoken to the motion, so I call the question.
On the amendment?
Yeah, on the amendment.
So I'd just like to add, I think that's exactly what we need to do. We talk about our community is built on small business, and our current policies either attract and encourage or detract from the ability of small business to compete in the marketplace. And so now we've got a policy that we're hearing from a business owner that's saying it ain't working. And so then the decision is going to be either we're going to stay in business or we're not going to be in business. It's not whether it's going to be open till 3 or 4 in the morning. So I think that's exactly what we have to do then. I think not as a one-off, but look at our business community and say, if this policy isn't working, allowing you to be competitive in the marketplace, then council has to make a decision on that in terms of, is that a business opportunity that we're looking to ensure we continue to see thrive and survive in our community. So I think that's exactly what we need to do, is look at the policy, the bylaw, to ensure that it's working for our business community. Councillor Lexner?
Just following through, so for the owner, so it's clear, I mean, the motion that's on the floor would be one that isn't supporting the 4 a.m. operation, but council will look at the entire policy as a whole to see if there's a wish to change it. That way it isn't just your organization or your business that would be looked at, it would be across the board. Are we prepared as a council to reconsider a policy that's been put in place previously?
And absolutely. Councillor Parslow, go ahead.
Well, my understanding when I seconded it was that Councillor Letstrom has moved an amendment affirming the current bylaw.
At this point, because this application is before the Liquor Control Board, so we have no other choice. We would then have to enter into a discussion based on, do we want to review that policy? And that's a council wish. There may very well be a wish to look at that policy, and there may not be, but we would have to do it. I think this was looking for a response to the provincial body that is looking at this application, and presently, I wouldn't say our hands are tied, but we have a policy that says 2 a.m.
So, and that bylaw needs to be amended in order for us to allow that. So, on the amendment, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And on the motion, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And so as an action, I see that the mayor has responsibility for economic development. So I think I'll take this off and we'll engage with our business community and those business owners that are impacted by this bylaw, as the business owner is indicated in here, and we'll reach out to the others and perhaps call a meeting and arrange to meet with them and find out what are the pros and cons of our policy, and then we'll bring that back to council, and I'll engage you guys in that discussion as well when we arrange that meeting, hopefully in the very near future. Obviously, it's a significant impact to our business owner. Thank you. Good discussion. 7.4, we have report number 19145 from the Water Resource Manager regarding a request for quotations. Councillor Parslow.
Move that report 19145 from the Water Resource Manager, request for quotations 2019-37, booster pump piping, be received. Further, the City of Dawson Creek award the contract to Central Interior Piping and Maintenance Limited for the bid price of $156,109.05, including a contingency allowance of $30,000 and excluding taxes.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur, discussion. Councillor Lexstrom.
With the awarding of that, am I reading, maybe I've just misread it, the price is there, that includes the contingency, so if we award the contract and the contingency isn't used, we're not paying the extra $30,000?
Duncan?
To your worship, I'll ask Kevin to comment on that.
Or Devin?
Or Devin, sorry, yeah. There you go.
Kevin's going, no, yeah.
Yeah, that does include the contingency, so if we don't use the contingency, we don't pay it. Absolutely.
Okay, just for clarity then, I just want to make sure when I look at this, and because my computer is so fast.
Well, can I put it another way? That my understanding from reading it says, for the bid price of 156,109, including a contingency, so that's in the 156,000, right? So it could well end up 126. That's the way I read it. Is that correct, Devin?
Yes, that is correct. That's pretty standard for a lump sum stipulated price bid for this type of contract. That's pretty standard.
Okay, I misread it. I read it that regardless of if it, we were paying 156. So if we're not, 30,000 is utilized to finish the project or complete what we've asked, then it would be paid up to 156. Okay.
Good. Further discussion? Questions? You ready for the question? Duncan?
So through your worship, I'll just add, this is a good news story. This project was budgeted for full through the water utility, and my understanding is it has now been accepted as part of the water treatment plant expansion grant, and we will only end up paying 17% of the overall cost of this project.
Yeah. All right. Good job. And so the balance of that budgeted amount then goes back into our surplus?
Water utility.
The surplus in our water utility reserve. Thank you. 7.5, we have a report 19147 from the deputy.
We got to vote on it, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed you guys were all unanimous when we're only paying 17 grand. So. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report 19147 from the deputy corporate officer regarding request for quotations on the supply of culvert materials. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Worship. I move that report number 19-147 from the corporate officer regarding request for quotations 2019-39 supply of culvert materials be received. Further, that the city of Dawson Creek award request for quotations 2019-39 to PC Oilfield Supplies Limited for a price of $166,980 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. And this is our culvert project at the airport. Duncan?
So through your worship, this is part of the ACAP project that we receive funding for on fairly short notice. We are pushing hard through this project. We've received our engineered drawings for the civil work, which will be going out probably tomorrow. We will require a special meeting when we return from UBCM to award that in order to keep this project moving forward.
Good job. Thank you. Ready for the question, everybody? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So we got 10:30, and we got bylaws, and we're going to have some discussion in 8.1. So I'd like to take a recess for 7 minutes, and we'll be back at 10:40. And we're into bylaws.
No fly zone.
Yeah. And our next item, 8.1, is report 19136 from our Chief Financial Officer regarding our 2020 permissive tax exemption bylaw. So we get a motion to receive for discussion. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Earl. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Duncan, so I'll just get Duncan to give us a, go ahead, Duncan.
Sure, so through your worship, if we can just run you through the permissive tax bylaw in front of council today. So essentially, Flavia has put together a report that reflects our current policy and reflects our previous practice. And really the only change, or the big change within the report is a request for, I think, an additional 20 properties. Flavia, maybe take over and jump through. Flavia's been out of country, so she's still...
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry if I speak in Portuguese, but so it's through your worship. There is a new request this year, which is from the Dawson Creek Native Housing Society, but the other on the list, they are exactly the same as we had before. And then, as Duncan said, I followed the structure that we had before with a request of full exemption. And we also included an alternative here, saying another option could be for council to take partial grants, which is allowed through the BC assessment.
Through your worship, the only other item I would add is when we changed our policy most recently, which would have been a few years ago, we put it on a 3-year cycle where applicants must apply every 3 years. And however, council has a requirement to review the requests annually.
Thank you. Councilor Parslow.
The work of the council has been, of course, to, over a few years period, is to deal with the financial issues facing the city. It's been identified that a major portion of that work is to look at appropriate levels of support through taxation revenue, so that our city residents are not paying for things that exclusively for things that others enjoy. I can't support the status quo over permissive taxation. Tax exemption, sorry. I really am interested and would like to have a work through with you about alternative 2, where council, you write that council can choose to set a maximum municipal permissive tax amount. And basically, if the taxes for a particular enterprise are in excess of that limit, they pay the excess. It does show that we, by granting a portion of being exempt, some support for the enterprise, but I think this is just me speaking here, but as I look at, as the council is going to wrestle with this fiscal challenge, everyone must share in the burden and the adjustments to that. So I can't support the status quo. I think you've put forward a good, an interesting alternative in number 2 that I'd like us to work through. So if I can just, without identifying any particular place, and I'm going to choose as an example a place of worship. So let's say it's a church that preaches the gospel according to St. Charles. And their taxes are about $25,000. Over a phase-in period, which you have, and I like the phase-in period as well. After that phase-in period, let's say over a 4-year period, in 2023, the 10,000 excess, they would pay the full amount, right? Whereas in 2022, they'd only pay 70% of that. So I like that because people are given time to adjust to the new reality. Do you have an amount, and I think it's here, but can you, what is the total additional revenue that the city would enjoy in 2023 from all sectors? Is it?
Yeah, it's gonna be approximately, total municipal tax, 220,000.
220,000.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
on the 4th year when it's fully charged.
Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship, I will add that there are some mandatory exemptions through the charter, and we would need to obviously comply in places of worship, the actual place of worship itself and and the direct land that it sits on for that purpose is exempt. However, there are opportunities
Other
just
land is
other land, so
Yeah.
not all of these properties are eligible, but we would work through any of council's direction to ensure that we are looking at the eligible portions.
Sure, good, thank you. Councillor Lexton?
Just in looking at this, and there will be some difficult choices, as there is going to be right across the board when it comes to financial management of the city. The native housing, the new requests on those are not new buildings when I look at this. So how did it come about? Was there a recognition that they just hadn't been applying for this, or?
That's exactly it. They were not aware about their rights of asking for a permissive tax, so this year they decide to place the request.
Okay, okay. I'll just follow. I would concur with Councillor Parslow. I think this is part of what we have to, under our deliberations in the financial development of our budgets, we are going to have to review the permissive tax exemptions. As was pointed out by our administrator, there are legal requirements. Some automatically qualify. Others do not and are at the discretion of the council. So with the challenges we face, I think it is time we had a look at this bylaw and each individual property on it and made decisions which are going to be difficult. It isn't that they're not worthy, but it is a challenging time.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Well, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to make a motion, if it's possible. That the administration draft up a bylaw that reflects alternative 2 for council's future decision.
Under the September 9th report delivered by Flavia. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilbur? Discussion. Councillor Lexton?
Just on that, would there be room in that discussion, and I'll look to the mover of the motion, there may be ones on here that would go completely off of this tax exempt rule, not be in a transitional phase that says we are only going to pay X dollars. I mean, when I look at it, I think we're going to have that tough discussion that says, you know, we're going to honor this tax exemption under the bylaw, but there may be others we want to remove completely.
Councillor Parslow?
Very good points, because there are a few red flags there. So, I mean, and we could either make a separate motion at the time of the review of the bylaw. We could also review whether we wish to grant permissive tax exemption to some of them. So we could roll it into the one thing, or get the bylaw and then decide which properties, if we like, we don't agree that they should receive any exemption.
All right.
I mean, but it does need to be done. So is it
Brenda?
Through your worship, I was going to suggest a separate motion.
Okay. Because this is going to give direction to administration to bring back a report for the drafting of the bylaw for how we will now deal the changes to permissive tax exemption bylaw, and it's providing direction of a phase in and how it's going to impact on it. So if there are specific properties that council are saying, wait a minute, we need to deal with them immediately, then we should take that as a separate direction to administration for the bylaw, I think. So we're going to overall bylaw and how we're going to impact permissive tax exemption, and if there's specific properties that council have identified, then we should provide that specific direction.
A separate motion.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Lexton?
For clarification then, under this, with the motion we presently have, that report will come back for the development of the 2020 budget. Is that our intent? Yes.
Yeah. And we have to do that by October
31st.
Okay.
So we have 2 meetings basically from now to then to get that done.
Right.
So we really need some tightness around direction to administration on that information coming back to council for that decision. Duncan?
Through your worship, if you're going to request additional information, if there are individual groups that you are considering and would like financial information or updated financial information, as the policy, through the policy they provide that, we may want to give them some leeway as well, or some opportunity to do that as well. But I'm not sure what council would like to see in that consideration.
Sure. So on the motion that we have currently in front of us is that we're going to direct administration to bring back a recommendation of a bylaw for council to deal with a new model for permissive tax exemption. It's laid out in option 2, where we're going to have a phased in for the various categories over a 3-year period, which on year 4 gets to a final end of how we'll be dealing with permissive tax exemption for our financial budget. Everybody, any further discussion? Any further comments, questions? Duncan?
So for clarification, Your Worship, we will bring back a report. I believe it's September 9th, I think, is the meeting.
That's today.
Or sorry, September, yeah.
Better
Sorry.
not be today.
Yeah, October 7th, I mean. So through Your Worship, and we'll bring back a phased plan within all areas.
Yes.
Okay.
Brandon?
Sorry, through your worship, one more clarification. So the bylaw will include the Nalakan properties?
No. I don't think that's been included at this point, and I don't see it being a part of council's consideration as option number 2. Duncan?
So through Your Worship.
We'll provide separate direction behind that.
At this point, we're phasing of the existing. Council has not added any new properties at this time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not including the additional properties that have had requests. Now, do you want a specific motion to that effect, or is it included in this report for option 2? Duncan?
So through Your Worship, the recommendation was that we were including them. Council has not gone with that recommendation, so they are not eligible for that permissive tax and will not be included in the calculation unless council would like to see it.
Okay, so right now they're not in this calculation, and they won't be included in the calculation for the report that council are bringing back, or administration are bringing back for the bylaw. Councillor Parzal?
Okay, my understanding is we're going to have through another resolution, we're going to give direction about what properties, a process of review.
Yeah.
And at that time, we could decide to put some in or not, or take out.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification for council in terms of the direction we're giving to administration right now on this report for the drafting of the bylaw, and they don't include those properties. I just wanted to clarify that. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Okay, now number 2. Councillor Lexer?
I would move that council enter into a discussion to review our tax-exempt bylaw. I don't know if we call them participants.
Applicants?
Applicants for review and consideration as to who will, I guess, be maintained on that list. I mean, the whole intent is to have a look at this list, say, we agree with all of it, we agree with 90% of it, we agree with, but these ones we don't, and at that point have to make the decision. But I think council's going to have to look at that list and make some difficult choices. So.
And do you want that direction now, administration, or can we do that with the report that's received?
Through Your Worship, timing, it'll be October 7th. Maybe I'll defer to Flavia. So,
Yeah, sorry. Actually, it would be better for this resolution to identify now those that should be on the list, because when I bring back the bylaw, I will reflect the calculation, and then needs to have the first 3 readings and then the adoption the next meeting. So if we bring this on October 7th to decide, then I need to do the computation, and it's gonna be overlapping.
you would require a special meeting
We
to
would
do the first
require a
3
special
readings.
meeting, yeah.
So we had, sorry, I'm going to go back to Blair on that motion. And
It was my intent, I didn't think we would have time to go through each one today, get the information we needed in order to do that. We may have to come together or prior for response by our administration. But I mean, I'm happy to do it today, but I think it'll be a difficult process.
I'm leaning more to, let's get the report. If we need to do a special meeting behind that to be able to identify that, it's important enough that I think October's, and then that gives the council the opportunity to see the report and then make those recommended changes outside of the report that you see or identify. Councillor Earl first and then Duncan.
I would support that as well, Your Worship, as Duncan said, with respect to whether or not some of these organizations will continue to qualify for an exemption. I think they all do good work in their own way, and I appreciate we're on a tight timeline with respect to what our legal requirements are, when our budget has to come through, but I also don't want to blindside anyone, and anybody who's ever, and I've worked for a nonprofit, to find out you've got an unanticipated $20,000 expense that hasn't been budgeted for. I'd be in favor of your sentiment to, if we have to do a special meeting, let's do a special meeting and give those folks some time to get their ducks in order as well.
Sure. So, Blair, your motion was?
My motion was to review the tax-exempt bylaw participants or eligibilities that are in there today. And so whether that's following the meeting, I'm fine on that. But if it's going to be part of our 2020 budget process, chances are we're going to need a special meeting post this report to do it.
All right, so let's get we'll have that information circulated to council. We can do that in advance and just ask that information be forwarded to council in preparation for the October 7th meeting. Brenda?
Was there a seconder to?
No, we didn't have a seconder, so I just wanted to clarify that. So seconder, Councillor Earl? I wasn't sure we were needing a motion, so I just wanted to kind of clarify that. So we've got the motion, direction, and seconded, and we'll have administration provide that information to council on all those identification of all the properties on the permissive tax exemption in preparation for the October 7th meeting. Does that work? Duncan?
So through your worship, the only piece I would add is we will require a special meeting the week of September 30th to award the civil works for the airport. In speaking with Flavia, we can have these scenarios in front of council for September 30th, allowing you to have that discussion at that special meeting, allowing us to bring back the first 3 readings October 7th and meeting our current schedule.
So we won't identify the special meeting date or that information, but we are going to bring it forward. Good. Yeah. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, in support of what you just said, I'd just like to add that shouldn't we be identifying those entities that we have questions on, because we might need more information about their finances. I mean,
that's why we'll have it for September 30th for that meeting, and then on October 7th we'll have the bylaw.
We'll have the
okay. Good. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So now, at this time, we're going to adjourn, recess our open, and move to closed, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock for the media to reopen to our open meeting. So we'll take 5 minutes to move to close the open meeting for Monday, September 9th, and we have a delegation here this afternoon to begin item 2.6, and it's Dr. Sandra Allison's here, from Chief Medical Health Officer from Northern Health, and Dr. Kim, the Chief Medical Health Officer for Northeastern British Columbia, and Ali from Northern Health, Environmental Health Officer. So welcome. Our conversation today is obviously one that's been long going on in our community since the tragic event in 2016. Today is about conversation and a discussion and some information around Rotary Lake and its future, and we appreciate you guys being here, and I'll pass the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I'd like to address Council with the initial, just a very brief history of the Rotary Lake. I know we just did this, but I wanted to repeat for the public that are attending. So in 1967, Rotary Lake facility was constructed and given to the City of Dawson Creek by the Rotary Club. In 1968, the public health inspector identified a number of issues at the facility to be addressed prior to issuing the operating permit. In 1968, the City of Dawson Creek, with the MLA's assistance, requested the facility be classified as a lake rather than a swimming pool. In 1981, following numerous inspections at the facility resulting from complaints concerning the poor conditions of operation, that was 1981, the Chief Public Health Inspector issued a letter to the city citing concerns about the conditions. In 1988, the Medical Health Officer, Dr. Ross, issued a notice to the city to make improvements to the facility, including a number of interventions. In 1989, Rotary Lake received an order in council exempting it from the swimming pool, spray pool, and wading pool regulations. The Attorney General indicated that an exemption was only appropriate if the exempted pool did not constitute a health hazard to that community. In 1989, the facility reopened after a year of being closed, and in 1994, a 5-year-old girl drowned at the Rotary Lake. Chief Environmental Health Officer indicated that the drowning was due to the murkiness of the water and overcrowded conditions. In 1996, the Chief Environmental Health Officer wrote the Ministry of Health informing them that while sampling, the Environmental Health Officer had noticed a suction pipe running across the ground into the basin. In 1997, Medical Health Officer Dr. Kelly Barnard issued a letter to the city informing them that carrying out the work to upgrade the facility would not affect their exemption. 2016, on August 13th, a 12-year-old girl became entrapped in the main drain of Rotary Lake due to a suction hazard. She was taken to the hospital where she died. In 2017, a medical health officer, myself, sent a letter to the provincial health officer to recommend that the province repeal the facility's exemption from the pool regulation, stating that the requirements for the Public Health Act are alone insufficient to ensure ongoing safety of the public, as the Public Health Act is general in nature. The current exemption for the facility is an impediment to safeguarding the public health and safety. 2017, as a result of unapproved work done on the circulation equipment, a violation ticket was issued to the Mile Zero Society. And in 2017, BHO Brown revised the order to ensure that Rotary Lake facility remained closed and no work done to the pool, the equipment, or basin without receiving written approval. In 2017, the Northern Health team, including Dr. Kim and community members, met and discussed the state of affairs. Public Health Officer and the Chief Medical Health Officer met on this issue in 2018. And in 2018, the issuance of the coroner's report for the individual who died in 2016 was released. Rotary Club of Dawson Creek sent a letter to the Premier in 2018 requesting the exemption to be maintained. And in 2019, the health hazards identified at the facility are as follows, and I will hand it over to my colleagues.
So just to summarize, the hazards that have been identified throughout the history and that are still existing today are the ongoing operator non-compliance, the suction and limb entrapment hazard, the water clarity issues, operator competence to operate the facility, lack of staff on site and lifeguards, and the exemption from the regulation itself, which has allowed for all these conditions to persist over the years.
Thank you. And we'd like to thank the council and the community for inviting us to talk about the issue and especially to talk about the solutions. And for solution to this facility, we discussed about the history and a multitude of hazards existing facilities. The solution to this facility should address that the totality of a hazard should be able to address not just part of it, but totality of that. And that includes fixing the structural issues, improving the operations, as well as the regulatory kind of gap that make it difficult to provide proactive and preventive kind of regulations and oversight and keeping the facility safe. So that's what we kind of propose for our kind of proposed solution going forward for this facility is a partial exemption. One is addressing the structural issue, addressing the operational issues, as well as putting it under the better regulatory system, the pool regulation, at the same time looking into what's necessary and what's feasible for the city. And we'd like to have a conversation about this, as well as other questions and concerns about the facility.
Thank you. And I think so part of the issues for us are structurally, first of all, there are aspects to a facility built in 1966 or 68 that make it very, very difficult, if not in some cases impossible, fiscally to do some of those modifications to that facility. There are some things that are possible and can eliminate some of those hazards. And so structurally there are some things that can be done and some that can't. And then the other aspects of operating a facility with that long-term plan is the issue for us that I think we really need to engage in, because it's unrealistic for, I think, us or the society who operate it to put any kind of an investment into it to try to begin to meet some of those structural issues if we don't have a full understanding of what it is that it's going to take for us to get it reopened and get that exemption lifted and move it forward without having that full and total understanding of what's going to be required. Because that's the issue. We can fix some of it. We can't fix all of it. What can we do in order to remove some of the risks that exist in the medical health officer's opinion? And I think that's why it's really important for us to now engage in this conversation and discussion. Councillor Parslow, you had a question about the public waters versus public lake.
Yes, one of the issues I think that's come to my mind from the public meetings I've attended is the seeming absence of Northern Health in looking at the safety issues in some of our lakes that are used for swimming, with demarcated swimming pools. Swan Lake, Charlie Lake as two examples, or the fact that we have a river system here that has a lot of high coliform counts, and another river just downstream from the sewage lagoon is being used. So why is Northern Health so seemingly seems just picking on this one man-made facility and ignoring some of the natural areas that have been demarcated by parks as for swimming? Why the difference?
Yeah, actually, thank you so much for addressing that question, because we heard about that. That's really important issue to address. Let me kind of address three different parts of that. One is that kind of pool versus lake questions, and the second part is that is there any kind of special kind of hazard in the facility, and the third question is why the kind of proactive action hasn't been kind of taken. One part about the kind of lake or pool, I actually propose let's move beyond about the man-made facility versus natural lake kind of conversation, but let's talk about what the men decide about these facilities. In terms of the safety of these facilities, one key feature of this facility compared to a natural lake is that we as a community decide how safe it's going to be. We face the restrictions and other things, but we determine how it's structurally going to be there, how it's operationally going to be there, and how it's regulated. So we decide how safe this facility is going to be. I want us to kind of focus on that discussion because we control a lot more about these facilities, and our solution will make a difference for these facilities. Second part is that is there something that why there additional attention on the Dawson Creek the Rotary Lake facility compared to other kind of natural lake with the designated swimming areas. Besides kind of that incident took place, one major difference in the Rotary Lake facility is that it's almost because it's such a popular and valuable facility to the community. A lot of people use the facility. That means the risk, any kind of safety issues from the facility to the community is a lot larger than those designated kind of swimming areas in natural lake. That's not as popular as a Rotary Lake. The number of users, accessibility is very different from Dawson Creek compared to other designated kind of swimming areas. The third key question is that why Dawson Creek is selected out, why there hasn't been the proactive action being taken. We heard the history from Dr. Ellison that there has been many times in history, public has brought up the concern, tried to work with the cities. And I'm sure the city in a council and so on had a discussion about what to do about the facilities, but it was challenging with other competing priorities and so on to make a decision and take the action that make a difference in the facility to make it safe. And that really highlight to the difficulty and the challenge with the current regulatory gap. Right now, the region, so when the city, we raise the issue, we discuss with the city, when city doesn't follow, what Northern Health can do. There's not much can do under the current regulatory system when the facility is not under pool regulation, but under Public Health Act. As we discussed a little bit at the kind of closed session, the Public Health Act is emergency response legislation. We cannot raise a Public Health Act for the turbidity issues. very important issue to address for ongoing safety of the pools, but you cannot use a Public Health Act for turbidity concern because you need to have emergency. And as you have experience in the Public Health Act is not a precision tool. It's a blunt hammer. Like we close the facility, and like you have to figure out a way to fix that. Like it doesn't provide enough guidance, doesn't provide this, and that was kind of relationship and partnership. Doesn't provide very good way for, especially the proactive relationship partnership. And yeah, so that's kind of a. I hope that address some of your questions, and I'm happy to address. I'll actually check with Dr. Ellison. Anything to add to that?
I think you did a better job answering than I did. So.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. And I just want to follow up on a question I asked in close, which I don't think necessarily I didn't get an answer for. And it's fine to ask it open. But with respect to some of the thoughts, and Council has expressed an interest in working with you guys to find a solution for a partial exemption around the engineering and tightening up the operations and mitigating the risk as much as possible. As I said, the crux of this issue for us is going to be our ability to staff it with full-time lifeguards in the summer. As I said, it's a free service. It's open for 3 or 4 months of the year. We already have a public swimming pool staffed with lifeguards, and it's very expensive to operate, and we have a hard time staffing that as it is. So I was just asking if you could, is there a way forward where we have an alternative model that doesn't include full-time lifeguards, or is that a conversation stopper?
Is your question?
Yeah, to you guys.
You know, we discussed that we want the totality of solution to address totality of hazard. The thing about the lifeguard is that having the lifeguard as a component of solution really make it easy for a lot of different kind of hazard. Like we have a concern about some water quality, some concern about some structural issue, concern about some other things. But knowing that they're gonna be the trained lifeguard with a safe response system there can make it a lot easier to address about the other hazard. So it's a really important components to have. They're different. And the key part of life hazard addressing is that response components. The turbidity, water quality, a lot of components to address kind of a preventive and proactive part of the kind of safety of the facilities. The lifeguard address the response part of that. I love to hear what other proposal the city has around that response system, like and improving from the current systems. And again, the question then come back to, is that response system combined with other kind of that proactive end systems, will be able to address totality of hazard. I'm afraid I cannot give you like black or white kind of answers, but it just to address it's lifeguard is a key part of that key response system, like of the solutions. And we like to hear like our recommendation and what we see as required for safety is trained full-time staffing. City had other suggestions, and when we combine with the rest of the kind of systems, I love to hear what we can consider as address the hazard and feasible for the cities.
No, what I hear Dr. Kim saying, Jeremy, is that he really does want to be working with the community for a reasonable solution. That's what I hear.
And a pool safety plan in the event of a hazard, of an emergency, is being responded to by trained, responsible people on site?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Lexer?
Okay, and thank you. So what I heard from that was you're prepared to talk to us. It may or may not include lifeguards at the end of the day.
Well, that need to be a good response system because it's such a key part of the system. And when we kind of review that previous incidents, and we haven't done that, but if you look at that, the one before in 1994, like the response system is the key. So we like to hear that. How the forms, if you have alternative proposal, I'm happy to hear that.
Okay. So a couple of things. So first of all, I think the facility has served our community very well, not to diminish the tragedies. They are tragedies that you've addressed here today. Whether they're at Rotary Lake or whether they occur anywhere, people are saddened without question. It is a horrendous thing to have to deal with. Two things. One, I read in the coroner's, and I'll read a paragraph here, and I'd like your comment. It says, after Beverly's death, a number of health hazards were identified, including but not limited to inadequate fencing, no supervision. It doesn't say no lifeguards, no supervision. Pool water, clarity, inadequate safety and first aid equipment, as well as a single main drain which created a suction hazard. Northern Health issued an order under the Public Health Act which closed the facility. An engineering assessment made a number of recommendations that were to be carried out prior to the order being lifted. I'm not aware in that engineering report it said mandatory lifeguards.
If you look at the engineering report, there are some conditions we put it as what we consider as necessary to implement before the facility open, and other recommendations that we can work on while the facility open and can continue to work on that. And I'd be surprised, the engineering report might be focusing on engineering elements of that kind of facility and pool regulations, but is a lifeguard not included in the facility? Because we did put that on the order as one of the key hazards like in the facility. And again, it's the lifeguard is that it's existing good system with a trained staff and response and so on. Key part is that we need to have a response system there, and without the response system, it's one of the key kind of the components of the safety for the facilities.
Okay. So, unless I've misinterpreted the engineering that I've looked at, doesn't go that far. So that would be open for discussion then as we move forward to try and find a resolve. As I said, this has been a great, I used it as a child, my children used it, my grandchildren used it, and it never, not one point, did I have anything other than respect for the city and the operation of that facility. So, and I still think that this can be operated in a manner that meets the needs of the residents, the safety of the residents, and also the financial viability, because we have to be real. I mean, how much can you spend? If it is about eliminating risk completely, I think we're living in the wrong world, because there's risk every day. We're happy to work with you, but there was a question asked earlier that talks, and unless I understood it, NHA was aware, as I read through the different information I've had, that you had concerns about the lake prior to the latest tragedy that occurred. Did I hear you say that you couldn't act on any of your concerns unless someone was injured or died and it became something you could then intervene in? Is that what I heard from
I
Northern
just
Health?
clarify that there has been a lot of actions being taken, but without that poor regulations and without implementing that public health order in the public health, what we've done is that conversation, negotiation, request to the city to operate better. And the typical part to the enforcement of the Public Health Act, as you see, that can be different form. One of the form is the closure of the facility with order and so on. That require emergency or the imminence of that emergencies. So it doesn't require that, but it require emergency. And I want to ask you, but you can expect if the facility with that popularity and value to the community, if in a previously, without the emergency, public health imposed or issued the order on the facility, would the city have followed the order, or there has been a serious consideration fighting the order at court?
Based on what the order said, I guess I couldn't answer that unless I seen that order. I mean, a reasonable order, we're all for safety. I can guarantee that. Nobody ever wants to knowingly put somebody at risk. That just is not our intent or anybody I would ever, know. So the idea is, how do we get that facility back up and operating for the use of the residents of not just this city, but this region, in a manner that we can do it together? What I've read so far, what you've required of us, I think it's fair to say the city couldn't operate that. But what I'm also hearing you say is, look, we're willing to enter into a discussion to see if we can find common ground somewhere in the middle to get this thing working. And if I'm not interpreting that right, I'd like you to clear that up now, but I think I am. So.
What I'm kind of proposing is that there is a safety issue in the facility. The facility needs to be safe, so it doesn't pose risk to the community. So when it open and available for the community and the members and the children of the community can have a great time in the community without being at unreasonable risk.
Right, minimize risk, I think is what you want to say, not because
And
we'll never
addressing the
eliminate
preventable
risk.
like in the facilities. And what we made our recommendations, what we see as a necessary necessary for the safety, we like to hear from the city what's feasible and continue the conversation. Is there a way we can find a solution that address the hazard and is the feasible for the cities, so we can implement that and kind of move forward.
There are absolutely, and I'm going to reiterate that opening piece, there are absolutely things that we can do within that infrastructure, within the engineering that we can, some things we can fix. It was built in 66 or 68, some stuff you just can't do. And it's crazy to think that you can do it and spend the kind of money that would be required to do it. Anyway, I think that's the issue for us now that we've had this. I think it's been very worthwhile. And I think what we do now is with our administration, we're going to put together, with council's input, we're going to put together some of that detail of what we can absolutely say, here's some things that we can do to meet this. But we need to then have that really open, frank conversation with you folks to say, here's some stuff that we buy, that you say you can do, that we might meet that obligation under the stuff, and some other stuff. And if that gray area that we say isn't feasible, then I think that's what we need to understand. We need to, I think you guys have to give us that direction, and we have to have that from council to be able to take that back and then make our decision on what those next steps are. But I'm obviously hopeful and optimistic that as we have these discussions, and I think Blair said it, we keep talking about a really amazing community asset, but it's been a regional asset. We have people from around the region come down here in the summer months, and they'll spend with their holiday trailer 2 or 3 days at the Mausero Park, and the kids are at Rotary Lake enjoying time, and it's been that kind of an asset for the whole region, and it's been that important to us. And I think the reason that we're so passionate about it is because our community is so passionate about it. But we never want to minimize the tragedy of this August 16th event, and for any of us. And not one of us would ever imagine our children or grandchildren being exposed to that, and that's not part of anything that we're hope to espouse here, that we're minimizing that in any way. So thank you so much for being here today. We'll council will gather it back around, and we'll start to put that information together, and we'll absolutely engage in the very near future to talk about that next steps and how we can move this forward if it is possible.
So we're not looking for a late September opening this year.
It's been a little cool. Thank you so much again for coming, and we really appreciate you being here
very
too.
much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this conversation, and that we will continue to have this conversation. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Likewise, we appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll go back into our agenda, and we've done, we're in bylaws 8.1, we're at 8.2. Sorry.
Just get the computer going.
Sweet. All right.
Oh, yeah.
8.2, everybody?
Yep. I got you here.
8.2 is our report 19-140 from our Deputy Corporate Officer regarding our bylaw notice enforcement and municipal ticket information bylaws, and this is to do with the changes to our animal bylaw. Councillor Earl?
I move that report number 19-140 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding bylaw notice enforcement and municipal ticket information system amendment bylaws be received. Further, that the following bylaws be given first 3 readings. Bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw number 4425-2019 and municipal ticket information system amendment bylaw number 4426-2019.
Thank you. Second? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mayor's business. So we met with, Mayor and Council met with the new acting district manager for the Ministry of Transportation and Highways Infrastructure a few weeks ago, and had a great conversation about initiatives and issues ongoing, and really appreciated them reaching out and giving us a chance to have some time with them. I attended the LP event at the Pioneer Village, and I think it's 31 years for LP and the grand reopening of their new facility. Thank goodness, and I say this in retrospect when we look back at LP's decision to transform that plant from an OSB plant into a siding plant, and it's really transformed that plant for us and our community and the long-term economic benefits, because you see the troubles that are going on in the interior of British Columbia right now with the forestry sector, mills being curtailed or mills being shut down, and certainly we could have been very easily in that same situation with the Louisiana Pacific plant here had they stayed as an OSB plant. They closed the one down in Fort St. John as a result of that. So it's really good to have seen that and experienced that and have that kind of a economic benefit to our community. We met, obviously, we have our new highways maintenance contractor, Argo Road Maintenance, are now the maintenance contractor for the South Piece, and Mayor and Council had the opportunity to meet with the new management team with them, and really very encouraged by the proactive approach that Argo are taking, and they've situated themselves in Dawson Creek out at the airport subdivision with a new purchase in the facility there, and looking to expand their presence in the city of Dawson Creek and providing that road maintenance service to our community and region. I've been really impressed to see their proactive social media communication tool, and really being a daily update on Facebook and Twitter and all those other things with where they're at, what they're doing in Dawson Creek, Tumbler Ridge, Chetwynd in the region, and so good for those guys. I got invited to, and I attended rally down in Mackenzie about a week and a half ago, and Mackenzie are obviously one of those forestry communities that are really being impacted by the downturn, and their mills are being curtailed or shut down, and so they had a rally, Mackenzie Matters, a week and a half ago, and I went down and spoke at the rally and supported them as our neighbors, and how important all of us are on the resource sector and resource development, and they're supporting our community neighbors, and I was happy to be there for them. And it was very, very well attended. The Minister of Natural Resources, Minister Donaldson, was there and spoke, and a huge response by the community as well as by various organizations and community groups and the unions and on supporting Mackenzie and their message. So it was good. We had a request by the Watershed Committee today to do a paint a fish on our manhole covers. So we need a direction to administration.
Are they painting the fish, or are we painting
They
the
will
fish?
be.
Okay.
Well, on the ones that will lead into the creek, I guess.
Move that we grant their request.
Duncan, can you give any?
Sure. Through your worship, it's really just that education component and literacy regarding the creek, and just helping people understand that anything that may be a curb and gutter ends up in the creek eventually. So this is completely their resources. We have no resources in this. It's through the Watershed Society. It's a strong program, and it's something that they're willing to take on.
Good. Council? Councilor Earl, Councilor Wilbur?
Yep.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.2, we had, when we were doing our agenda, we saw that we got a meeting in December. Our calendar puts us meeting December 23rd, which is a Monday, and so we thought we should
move it to the Wednesday.
Move it. Well, yeah. That's what I said, but administration for some reason can't make it that day.
Well, that's fine. We just have a meeting with our administration.
Councilor Wilbur?
I want to discuss my
Okay, well,
under mayor's business too.
I'm
Just
sorry. Yeah, I'll
remind
get
you.
to that. My apologies.
Move we accept the proposed schedule, amended schedule.
Thank you.
December.
Second, Councilor Lexner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Councilor Wilbur moved forward a motion on our crosswalk.
Councillor Parslow.
Go ahead.
I would like to move that we paint our rainbow sidewalk. I'm not sure what the street is, but at the secondary school campus to match the example provided by staff, which I think will be much more effective.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Administration, is this part of our ongoing maintenance?
Yes, so through your worship, I don't believe there's any additional cost to this. It's just a little bit of a change. Will we be getting to it this fall, or would that be a spring activity?
I can check and see what we can do. If the weather's better than it is today, we can certainly do it.
You know, although we look at that, it may be, you know, best use of time and effort to do it in the spring versus paint it just before we throw the snow blades down onto the ground and tear a bunch of them. I'll just throw that out for consideration. It seems many times, if you look at Ministry of Transportation, I'll give you a good example, our lines are getting painted mid to late August sometimes up here, and then the snow falls and they're scraped off before we get to, you know, get good use of seeing them. But
I was talking to a guy the other day, he said no snow this winter, he's promised.
No snow this winter. No rain this summer either.
So administration, are we going to do that this fall?
So through your worship, well, so through your worship, this is a council resolution, so really the timing could come from council. We'd probably recommend in the spring. I believe we're done all of our line painting for this year.
Councillor Wilbur?
I'm fine with it being done in the spring. I mean, that's also cost effective. Then just a note, like, I'm sure we have crosswalk signs there, but, you know, for the winter, like, just maybe we can check that we have crosswalk signs. But I also just want to add, you know, I hope my colleagues agree and this goes through, but I just want to put out there to whomever it is that seems it's appropriate to do a burnout on this crosswalk, shame on you. So I just want to put that out there. Crosswalks are for safety, and we're recognizing that we're an inclusive community. So I just want to put it out there that it's inappropriate on any sidewalk, but on any crosswalk, but definitely one that is about inclusion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So we'll proceed with the painting, and it'll be done in the spring. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And sorry, yes, thank you, Blair. Nalkin Friendship Center. Jenna was here and had a request that we bury the sign by Duncan.
So for clarification, your worship, so there is a portable sign section within the sign regulation bylaw. The variance they would be requesting would be the 30-day cap that we currently allow. They were looking for 3 years, I think, is what they were looking for. As far as process, if council wanted to move forward with this, Kevin, is there notification and is there readings, or how does that move forward?
It'd be a variance, be a development variance through the bylaw, which I view it very similar to what we did with the soccer. Through the sign bylaw on there as well.
So if council wanted to move forward with this, the direction would be to staff to bring back a report moving this forward.
Okay. Councillor Alexa?
Just certainly worthwhile. I understand what they're trying to achieve, but are we going to go down a path here where if we're going to grant one exemption, do we negate our own bylaw and the criteria in it? Because it would be hard pressed to say no to the next person that came with it, because this is a worthy cause. Is there a better way to work with Nalkin for them to achieve their goal, which is to get their message out on the activities, to have greater participation, I think is what they're after. That would be the question I think we want to maybe have a discussion about. If I'm supportive of helping them, I'm just not sure this is the end all that may really create a situation where we should move that part of the sign bylaw out and let everybody go about putting their signs up like they used to. So.
Councillor Wilbur?
I concur with Councillor Leckstrom. It's opening a can of worms, and I just want to say there's a difference between a sports arena or venue compared to lining signs up along the streets or on private property. It can become quite littered, and so I concur on that. But also to what Councillor Earl had mentioned to the delegation earlier, those companies have the ability to put up not-for-profit ads, is my understanding, on their electronic signage. There's a lot of them around town, and you can actually capture every major thoroughway to advertise your events, and the business owners are pretty good about putting it on there. So I know there's the laundry, there's bowling, there's credit union, there's lots. So I think maybe the discussion is better to have with them, look at here's opportunities where you could advertise your events versus changing something that's we're gonna set a precedent and actually defeat the purpose of having that in the sign bylaw. Just my 5 cents.
Go ahead.
A further question, Your Worship, I know we have a sign out front through to our administration. Is it our policy to work with nonprofits on that as well to run theirs, or I'm just unaware of what our policy is based on our electronic sign?
Our policy at this point is just to advertise city events, city,
Okay.
not nonprofit organizations.
Okay. So like I said, I want to reiterate, fully understand and support their wish to enhance their ability to attract people in and let them showcase what they offer. The Nowickan does a wonderful job for us here in the city. But this one, I have concerns with one variance, because I think one variance will lead to the next, and very hard pressed for me to say I'll grant it here, not here, not here, but it's, if I had, and I would throw this out, and this may be with a little leeway from the chair, this may be an opportunity to table this issue, enter discussions with the Nowickan about approaching the billboards that are out there and the availability prior to carrying through with this. If somebody so chose to make that motion after I've spoke to it.
Well, we don't have anything on the floor right now because it was just brought forward as a delegation, so it's now up to council to give some direction to it. Councillor Lexman?
At this time, Your Worship, I would move we table the request and enter into discussions with Nowickan to see if there's a way to better achieve their goal prior to moving on this request.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Okay, I'll arrange. So, sorry. Any further discussion? I was going to say, okay, I'll move forward with it, but I got to vote first, don't we? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That's it for Mayor's business.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes.
There was one more item, the purchasing
RFP policy. Timelines, paving, 112.
Oh.
It was to review the purchasing.
Yeah,
no,
review
to
the purchasing
review the-
as the discussion.
So we're going to,
Motion to do that.
okay.
Yeah.
So moved.
Go. Councillor Parslow, we'll review and bring back the purchasing tender policy as part of our budget deliberation. Councillor Lexner? So, sorry, do I have a seconder first? Councillor Earl, go ahead.
Speaking to it, it wasn't my intent, certainly in the discussion, I don't think it was anybody else. We don't want to review the entire purchasing policy, do we? We're just looking at how do we achieve full compliance with the timeline.
Yeah.
So,
Timeline.
We're just
because that could put a lot of work on our administration. A section of a policy is far different than the entire policy
Yeah.
to review.
And I guess that's all, my,
That was my intent.
$5.
how the hell could that be ringing?
$20 fine.
I don't have a phone there. Anyway, we'll bring back the tender purchase procurement policy as it relates to our capital project.
Timeline.
Yeah. Well, we got to look at the policy to ensure what it is that so there's going to be some work in there.
So through your worship, this would probably be a good committee of the whole discussion. We can bring back the policy, we can have some discussion with council, and then kind of gauge where we're moving forward from there, if that's okay
Sure.
with you, your worship.
Good. Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And diary? Consent
Nothing to
calendar? Motion to receive consent? Councillor Lexstrom, Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Strategic priorities?
Nothing to update, your worship.
Media?
Come on, Marlon, pretend you're media.
And so we'll recess back to close, please.
All right.
Councillor Lexstrom, Councillor Kemp.
Do you think of any other ones?
All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.